Abby, first of all, thank you for that far too kind introduction. But as you just heard, my name is Dan Combs, and I was the former president of the Interfraternity Council, which is the student government that oversees fraternities at Penn State. I also am a current member of Men Against Violence, an organization that focuses on peer-to-peer education in order to prevent sexual assault on our campus. However, I'm going to be highlighting my experiences with the Interfraternity Council for this presentation. And I think that if you had asked me when I stepped into my position a year ago what I believed might cause the downfall of Greek life, my response would be social media. If there's any avid Facebook or Instagram users on here, you will agree with me that by the nature of the content that's posted on those websites, it definitely poses a threat to Greek life. But a year later, if you asked me that same question, I would give a different response, and that is sexual assault. And there's a lot of evidence in the news to support this. So many of you, this story may look familiar from the Rolling Stones about a rape that was reported at the University of Virginia. And I don't want to get into the details of whether the accusations made afterward, if the story was fabricated or exaggerated. I think I really just want to focus on the result of this story, which was the suspension of the fraternities and sororities at UVA. And we have seen a similar course of action taken by a number of college campuses across the country. A few that come to mind include Brown University and West Virginia University. And even in the time since I've written this speech and that I'm now delivering it to you today, we've all received a number of PSU text alerts, and we may have seen this Honors Day article about a possible rape that occurred at one of our Penn State fraternities. So this led me to ask the question, why is rape so prevalent on college campuses and specifically in our fraternities? And it's a bit of a peculiar situation because of all the fraternity men I know, even the frattiest of frat stars would agree with the core of the fight against sexual assault, at the core of it. Many of us have sisters that we've been defensive of since junior high that we've kept away from our male friends. And it's interesting how whenever we become active in the conversation, whenever it involves someone close to us or someone that we love, but when it's someone that we don't know, we assume it's someone else's problem. And really, I think the whole issue of sexual assault stems from a lack of education and a lack of awareness. So before I go any further, I want to make it perfectly clear right now that I don't pretend to be an expert on this issue. I'm only speaking based off the observations I've seen in a role where I represented a community where rape culture does exist. But I think I want to focus on the messaging that's taking place on our campus as far as spreading awareness and spreading education. And one campaign that comes to mind is actually a campaign that was done by our student government, UPUA, as a part of that the Don't Be That Guy campaign. And this is one poster that reads, "Just because she's drunk doesn't mean she wants to funk." And when I first saw this message, like some of you who just giggled, I did find it humorous, and I also think it is a powerful message. But when the fraternities were approached about putting this poster in their houses, they were resistant to the idea. And I think that they may have actually felt alienated or even accused by the message on it. And I think this brings up an important point, that sexual assault is something that needs to involve all of us. And we can't alienate anyone. The message needs to be inclusive towards all parties. So when I think about a campaign that was wildly successful here at Penn State, I think back to my freshman year when the Only Do It With Consent shirts hit campus for the first time and kind of took it by storm. And these were shirts that were distributed for free around campus. And the first thing you'll notice about it, the message is one that is inclusive towards all genders. And really anyone from any background can get behind it. But also, other elements that made this message successful, it was posted on a t-shirt for free. We all know that college students love free things, so that certainly helps. But the shirts are vibrant, they're neon colored, they're bright, they're fun. And to be honest, I actually see these shirts still worn at social functions at fraternities to this day. In fact, I actually brought mine here just to show. People hold on to them, and I'm not making this all up, we really have these. Oops, we went backwards. And now we went forwards. But yeah, so I think another really powerful component of this message is that they're being worn at a time when high-risk activities are taking place, when alcohol is being consumed. And we all know that there's a strong correlation between alcohol consumption and sexual assault. So this ideology led me to actually work on a project when I was on the IFC involving creating wristbands. And these are the wristbands we actually created. You can read the message there. And the way it worked is we distributed these wristbands on the day of a social function at a fraternity. And what I think was powerful about it was that all the guests attending that party that day saw this message beforehand when they were sober, and then they were forced to wear it as they entered the party and keep it on for the remainder of the party. And what this did is it created an environment where there was a heightened awareness of sexual assault. And while I can't pretend that any real issues or any of our issues were solved that day, I would like to believe that anytime there's a slight increase in awareness, that there's the potential to prevent a sexual assault from taking place. And sometimes that is all it takes to make the difference. So the final component I want to analyze in any message is what's actually being communicated. And I think a lot of you may be familiar with the No Means No campaign. That's the policy here at Penn State and Pennsylvania. And I think that this is actually implying an erroneous message, because it's telling you that if you don't hear a verbal no, that no rape has taken place, when realistically, no can be expressed in a number of ways. It could be expressed through silence, through body language, in a number of different ways. And I think a much more powerful message is what's taking off in a number of the Western states right now, the Yes Means Yes campaign. And some of you may be familiar with this campaign. It's actually not our official policy here, but it's the idea that unless you have that verbal consent, that you may not pursue sexual relations with a partner. And it's much more clearly communicated what consent may entail for someone who has no education about sexual assault, about what consent and how it's defined. So in all this messaging and analyzing it and the issue of sexual assault, I want to come back to the beginning and remind everyone that the messaging itself is not where the issue stems from, and it does stem from a lack of education and awareness. And the most important thing we can do in order to fight this issue is to all become educated ourselves, to become more knowledgeable on the issue. And on that note, if there's anyone in the audience who's interested in learning more about the resources that Penn State has to offer, or more specifically about Men Against Violence, we do some really incredible things, and I would love to share more information about these resources if you'd like to contact me. But it's really about welcoming more members into this fight against sexual assault. Thank you.